Over the past few years, stablecoins have become one of the most important asset classes in the entire crypto ecosystem. Whether it's trading, lending, or almost any kind of on-chain financial activity, stablecoins are now indispensable. But today, we're going to focus on a more specific direction: Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. So, what exactly are Bitcoin stablecoins? In simple terms, they allow users to lock up Bitcoin as collateral and then mint stablecoins that are pegged to fiat currencies like the US dollar. The idea is to use Bitcoin, the most secure and decentralized asset in the world, as the foundation. Compared to USDT or USDC, which rely on centralized institutions holding dollars in reserve, Bitcoin stablecoins are, at least in theory, more decentralized and more aligned with the original crypto ethos of trustlessness. Sounds perfect, right? Well, reality is far more complicated. Bitcoin stablecoins today are caught in a major paradox. They aim to be decentralized, yet most existing solutions remain deeply tied to centralization. Why do I say that? Let's break it down. First, custody risks. In many Bitcoin stablecoin projects, when users deposit BTC, the collateral is actually held by a single institution or a limited set of custodians. That means if the custodian fails, user assets are at risk. This isn't much different from USDT, depending on banks to hold their reserves. Second, cross-chain security. Since Bitcoin's mainnet lacks native smart contract functionality, most Bitcoin stablecoins lock BTC in a custodial address, and then rely on cross-chain bridges to issue pegged assets elsewhere. But as we all know, cross-chain bridges have become one of the biggest attack vectors in crypto, repeatedly exploited with billions in losses. Third, reserve transparency. Just like traditional dollar stablecoins depend on third-party audits to prove their reserves, Bitcoin stablecoins that rely on centralized custody still can't achieve true transparency. Users can't independently verify whether the collateral is fully backed, which undermines the very principle of decentralization. Fourth, governance centralization. Key parameters such as liquidation ratios, interest rates, or expansion limits are often decided by a small group of people, or even a single team. So even if the collateral asset, Bitcoin, is decentralized, the governance layer often isn't. This creates a strange contradiction. Bitcoin stablecoins were designed to move away from dependence on centralized dollars, yet most current solutions remain stuck in centralized traps. If we say that verification is power, then the real challenge for Bitcoin stablecoins is this: how do we decentralize custody, verification, and governance, so that power lies with the network, not a handful of institutions? And that's the core paradox we need to solve: the paradox of centralization. When we try to solve the centralization paradox of Bitcoin stablecoins, the truth is that the industry has already made several attempts. But if we look closely, the existing approaches still face obvious limitations. One common path is the multi-signature custody model. In this design, users lock their BTC into a multi-signature address managed by a group of signers. At first glance, this feels safer than relying on a single custodian, because the power is shared, but the reality is different. The identities of signers are often public, which exposes them to legal pressure, targeted attacks, or even coercion to surrender their keys. The signing threshold is also rigid. For example, a 3 out of 5 setup looks fine on paper, but risks in the real world are constantly changing, and the security level should be dynamic, while multisig has no such flexibility. And more importantly, the choice of signers is usually made by a core team or a small committee. That means governance power is still centralized, never fully handed back to the network. In other words, multi-signature cannot truly solve the problem, and it leaves the system with hidden risks of identity exposure and concentrated governance. Another path is to rely on sidechains or cross-chain bridges. Since Bitcoin's mainnet does not natively support smart contracts, many stablecoin projects lock BTC into a bridge and then issue pegged assets on another chain with more functionality. But this design brings even bigger trade-offs. Cross-chain bridges have proven to be one of the weakest links in the entire industry. In recent years, bridge exploits have caused losses in the billions, and once a bridge contract is compromised, all the collateralized BTC can disappear overnight. The verification process between chains is also extremely complex, and delays or consensus conflicts often cause funds to freeze or transactions to fail. And worst of all, the user's BTC has to leave the Bitcoin mainnet, which is the most secure environment, and move into a less secure system. This downgrade in security fundamentally undermines the value of using Bitcoin in the first place. So whether it's multi-signature custody or cross-chain bridges, both approaches fail to preserve Bitcoin's native security while building truly decentralized custody. And that brings us to the core question that DeepSafe is here to answer. How can we design a stablecoin custody and verification framework that inherits the full security of the Bitcoin mainnet, while at the same time being decentralized and transparent? We've already seen why multi-signature models and cytokine solutions fall short. So the question is there a new approach that can truly achieve decentralized custody and transparent verification for Bitcoin stablecoins? DeepSafe's answer is a combination of CRVA and Taproot, a dual innovation that changes the game. Let's start with Taproot. In 2021, Taproot was introduced as one of Bitcoin's most important upgrades. Its key innovation was the ability to implement complex multi-signature and smart contract logic on-chain in a way that is more private and more efficient. In simple terms, Taproot evolved Bitcoin from a simple payment network into a scalable and intelligent network. So how does DeepSafe use Taproot for custody? The core idea is to hand over custody rights to a dynamic committee, and the word dynamic is crucial here. In traditional multi-sig, signers are fixed. But with Ring VRF, DeepSafe can randomly select committee members from across the network. No one can predict or manipulate who gets chosen, which dramatically reduces the risk of collusion or targeted attacks. The second advantage is privacy. With the combination of Ring VRF and Taproot, the identities of committee members are hidden inside a cryptographic ring. This means that even if you're part of the verification process, it's extremely difficult to know exactly who is executing the operations, making targeted acts nearly impossible. The third advantage is multi-path management. DeepSafe's Taproot-based custody architecture includes 3 paths: normal operations, emergency handling, and audit verification. Under normal conditions, the committee runs custody according to rules. If a black swan event occurs, such as a large-scale attack or a network failure, the system can instantly switch into the emergency path to secure assets. And alongside this, there's always an audit path reserved to ensure transparency and verifiability. Now you might be asking, where does CRVA come in? CRVA, or Cryptographic Random Verification Agent, is the core mechanism of DeepSafe. It combines technologies like zero-knowledge proofs, MPC, and T, to make the process of verification fully decentralized and automated. In the Bitcoin stablecoin scenario, CRVA serves 3 key roles. First, it builds a decentralized custody pool. Instead of a single entity holding assets, they're secured collectively by distributed nodes, eliminating any single point of failure. Second, it enables real-time proof of reserves. With zero-knowledge proofs, anyone can verify at any time that reserves exist, in a process that is fully transparent yet protects privacy. The black box problem of traditional stablecoins simply disappears. And third, it brings dynamic risk assessment. CRVA isn't just a passive custody system, it adapts in real time. When market volatility spikes, it automatically raises the security thresholds. When conditions stabilize, it relaxes them to keep the system flexible and efficient. When CRVA and Taproot work together, what emerges is not just a decentralized custody solution, but a true self-custody network. It brings randomness, privacy, transparency, and dynamism into one framework, fundamentally solving the centralization paradox of Bitcoin stablecoins. In one sentence, DeepSafe CRVA plus Taproot, is not just a technical breakthrough, it's a paradigm shift. It moves Bitcoin stablecoins away from reliance on institutions and toward reliance on the network itself. It replaces trust in a center with trust in the entire system. When we combine CRVA and Taproot, the real value isn't just in the technology itself, but in the applications it unlocks. In other words, this isn't just a technical upgrade, it's an entire layer of infrastructure that can power the next wave of Bitcoin DeFi. The first and most obvious application is truly decentralized Bitcoin DeFi. For years, people have said that Bitcoin's DeFi ecosystem has lagged behind, and a big reason is the lack of secure, transparent, and decentralized custody. In the traditional model, BTC either has to be locked into a cross-chain bridge or handed over to a custodian. But that setup already goes against the spirit of Bitcoin. With CRVA plus Taproot, we finally get to trustless lending. What does that mean? It means that by simply collateralizing Bitcoin, users can directly borrow and liquidate without any centralized risk department approving the process. Liquidation rules are hard-coded into the custody and contract logic, fully open and transparent, leaving no room for manipulation. The second application is transparent reserve management. One of the biggest concerns about stablecoins has always been whether reserves really exist. We've seen too many cases where projects claim to be fully backed, only for users to later discover that funds had been misused when it was too late. DeepSafe's self-custody network rewrites that story. Through zero-knowledge proofs and distributed verification, anyone can check reserves in real time. It's not, we say we have it, and it's not, an auditor confirms it. It's, the chain itself proves it. That level of transparency massively boosts user confidence. The third application is community governance. A decentralized stablecoin isn't a static product. It needs to adjust things like interest rates and risk parameters based on market conditions. Traditionally, those decisions were controlled by a small group of insiders. But DeepSafe's design hands this power back to the community. Key parameters can be adjusted through open voting, and CRVA's dynamic risk assessment provides the real-time data needed for informed decisions, making governance both more decentralized and more effective. And if we zoom out, DeepSafe's innovation goes even further. It lays the foundation for a unified standard of cross-chain verification. As we know, cross-chain has long been one of the weakest links in crypto. Different chains use different verification models, and vulnerabilities keep showing up. But what happens if we apply CRVA as a universal verification layer? 3 things. First, atomic cross-chain transactions, meaning they either succeed entirely or fail entirely. No more scenarios where BTC leaves one chain, but never arrives on the other side. Second, state synchronization, where DeepSafe's nodes continuously verify and align states across chains to guarantee consistency. And third, automatic dispute resolution. If something goes wrong, say, a mismatch between a request and a verification result, the system triggers dispute logic instantly to detect and resolve the issue. So you can see, the value of DeepSafe goes far beyond Bitcoin stablecoins. It's essentially providing Web3 with a universal layer of decentralized verification infrastructure. Whether it's DeFi, cross-chain, or even future AI-driven applications, the combination of CRVA and Taproot becomes the trust foundation beneath it all. To sum it up, CRVA plus Taproot doesn't just solve the centralization paradox of Bitcoin stablecoins. It unlocks an entirely new design space for Bitcoin DeFi, while at the same time creating a new verification paradigm, one where trust shifts from institutions to the network itself. And that's what DeepSafe is here to build, the decentralized foundation of trust for the AI era and for the Web3 era.